Well, good Thursday morning. We are so thankful that you are here and thankful that we have an opportunity to once again have this time of updating you and really getting some great help from some wonderful people in our community. We have some special guests that are with us today. Michelle Patterson and John Smith are both with Heart Peace Counseling, which is a ministry partner of Stetson Baptist Church. And so we're grateful for their commitment to helping people and to encouraging people. I have known Michelle and John for a really long time, and I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to have this conversation with them, to just see the way that God has blessed them in their ministry, and to allow them to share with us some ways that we can be healthier even during this time of crisis. So, Michelle, John, welcome. We are so glad that you are here and with us today.
Thank you. We're glad to be here.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Great.
So I just we're going to ask just a few questions, and I'll kind of let you take it. If y'all want to share the answers, that's fine. Just whatever might work for you. The first question that I have are just, what are some things that you're experiencing during this situation that we're currently in your sphere of influence?
Well, the thing that's so interesting about this is that everyone's experiencing it all together. So it's not like it's isolated and it's everyone. And normally as counselors, we are somewhat removed from the situation. And what we're finding is, everyone on our team needs that kind of empathy and care along with the people we serve. And it's probably the same with your staff and with other first responders, people in the helping professions. But we're finding that every client we see, everyone in the community is impacted in some way to various degrees.
Yeah. I think the other thing is that not everyone responds the same way. Not every family is responding the same way. I start off every session, whether it's an individual or whether it's a couple, by asking them, so what are you learning? What are you seeing? What are you going through? Tell me about it. And it's interesting because the great majority of them, people want to talk about it. They want to talk about what they're learning. They want to talk about what they're seeing. They want to talk about this upside down, crazy situation that, as Michelle just said, everybody is in. So one of the greatest lessons that I have seen so far, and really love it, is that not everybody is cut out of the same cookie cutter. Everybody's coming at it different ways.
Yeah, that's so good. I have noticed, one of the things that we have to be intentional about is to maybe communicate or connect with people in a different way than we have in the past. Yeah. Texting has always, texting is a typical way of communication, but texting seems to be kind of thin right now. I think, that face-to-face or phone call, voice-to-voice communication really does help. It kind of allows that two-way communication and sharing so that they can answer questions like that. Yeah. Michelle, I appreciate what you say too. So many people that are in the business of helping need help. And we don't think about that a lot.
Yeah.
One thing I've kind of turned it as, and I'm going to be more casual because this is home Stetson Baptist, is crisis crazy. Is that everybody, it's in order to move forward to faith, freedom, and fearlessness, you're going to have to go through crisis crazy. And if we had time, it would be so fun to hear what that looked like for each person on your staff. And if you haven't gone through crisis crazy, there maybe just a chance that it's coming your way, or that you are not listening into your feelings. You're not, maybe not to that place where you're ready to face that. And what I mean by that is that it does affect the equilibrium of everything, from business, from personal. And there's different ways that this comes out. It can come out in positive ways. For example, my brother is learning to cook. If you knew my brother, you would know that's not normal. But that was a positive. For me, it was actually eating more and watching survival shows on the TV. And so I realized, okay, that was how my crisis crazy. I'm watching people kill moose in the wild while I have air conditioning. I have my refrigerator, and I'm overeating. And so at some point, eventually, there's so much opportunity And now I'm in a place where I'm doing things I've never done before as far as organization and hearing from God. But I really believe I want to normalize that there's a period of crisis crazy. You have to embrace that and grieve it and do what you need to do through that. And I didn't even have the impact that most people had, losing jobs, illness. And so I just want to normalize that for not only you all, but whoever watches this, that just to expect that it's going to be different. You're going to be it's going to be offsetting for you.
That is great.
Also, another point is we talk about those who are in the front lines. And I mean, you guys also as pastors and us as counselors and nurses and paramedics, and the list goes on, and police officers. It's an interesting phenomenon that I'm just seeing and just learning, and Michelle and one of our other clinicians, the three of us had a conversation the other week, is how people, particularly crisis, those who are in the front lines, see us, you guys, counselors, helpers, see us as an extension of themselves. They don't see us as somebody separate. In other words, they have no problem coming into our world. Even though they may have been exposed to the coronavirus, they still have no problem coming into our world because they see us as the ability to help them emotionally. It flipped me because before we went all telehealth, I had some clients who were sitting across from me saying, I've been exposed to the virus, but now I want to talk to you about it. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, I want to talk to you about it.
Could we talk through the door? Could we talk through the door?
Yeah. But now what they wanted to do is they wanted to unload their heart and assume that I'm in the same boat they are. I'm in that mode to help, to be there. So I think that's pastors. I think that's counselors. That's nurses. That's doctors. That's police officers. That's everybody who is in the front lines. People don't see a boundary. They'll step into our world because they need help. We're an extension of them.
Wow, that's great. That is great. We had to make a really hard call. We were actually just talking about this. We had to really make a really hard call around Easter because our plan was to have a drive-in Easter sunrise service. That was what we were going to do. We were going to have everybody come, sit in their cars in the parking lot. But when the stay-at-home order came from the governor, we kind of realized, first of all, by doing that, in some ways, we're kind of violating that stay-at-home order, even though people would be in their individual cars. But we were concerned that people would potentially see that extension of themselves in their church family and not maintain that social distance. I mean, even from the perspective of just seeing a friend and getting out of your car and saying, oh, well, it's not that big deal. I'll just go talk to one person.
Yes.
Well, but that one person might have talked to 4 other people, and they might have talked to 10 other people.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, we've all seen the animations on how this virus spreads, and it can spread without you knowing that you're passing it on to somebody else. And so it was a really hard call. We wanted so badly to have our church family together. Yeah. And, even if it was in the parking lot, we just wanted to have everybody there.
Yeah.
But your explanation of that really, really helps to say, oh, we see others as an extension of ourselves, those that are closest to us. That's so good. I've got a lot of questions here, but I think we're answering them as we're going along. I'm going to ask this. Maybe we've already talked about it, but in the midst, you mentioned the crisis crazy, and I think that's a wonderful thing. I mean, not a wonderful thing. That's not what I meant to say. It's a real thing. It's a true thing that it's a great concept because I think we've all experienced it, or we're in the process of it. What are there things in the mindset of kind of mental health and mental well-being and social well-being of ways that we can cope with the life change that's happening here? Are there thoughts that you have there?
I'll start. I have a couple, and these are going to seem, each one, and this goes back to just the nature of what we're going through, is going to seem that they're mutually exclusive. but one would be to be flexible and also have routine. So it's really important to be flexible. For example, so much now is technology. And as you know, that is not my strong suit. So I've had to learn to do that. At the same time, I've had to learn to create my own routine, and all of us have. It could change daily. What does that look like? You can't just stay up late and get, because then now your sleep, you need sleep. There's certain things you need to still do. And I think another thing is to pay attention to all those lifelines that you had before, especially a lot of the people we serve. Now they don't have that church gathering, that face-to-face. They don't have that worship music, in person corporate worship. They don't have where they could get out and just even those basic human interactions with a restaurant worker or something like that. And so that's very important to realize. Wow, walking around, even walking from your car to somewhere, that's an exercise. So we're sitting at home a little bit more, sitting in front of screens, and realizing, whoa, there's a lot of good sunlight. There's a lot of things that were a part of life that aren't part of life, and they're really impacting mental health. Another two things would be rest and purpose. Those are also kind of mutually exclusive, but not really. To realize that you're going to be more drained, you're going to be more tired. I felt that's surprising, because you would think, oh, I'm home, and it's more because everything is different. So your mind doesn't have a normal. And so your mind is taking in more information that's tiring, that's draining. And another thing I found was I have more time, but I need more time. And what I mean by that is I needed more time. I just need more time. And it's deliberate time, not veg out time. I needed to really think and be creative and pray. And God, what does this look like now? What are some things I've taken for granted, but they're not working for me now? What are some new ways? And this might be temporary. So what are some ways to create a new normal that's temporary? What are some things there's going to be permanent?
That's so good.
A lot of things there.
Yeah, no. It's so good. There's so much to share. I think probably one of the steps I share with folks to do is I find that if a husband or a wife has a little of a leaning towards a type A personality, they're used to controlling their environments. They're used to being at work, and they're used to being in that environment, and they're used to pulling the strings and knowing what to do. Yeah. And it's not just husbands, it's wives who are also in that. Particularly if the husband is home, the kiddos are home, she doesn't have control of her. She's the CEO of her home, Ephesians 5. So now she is used to controlling that environment, and she can't control it any longer. She doesn't have that ability. So without even realizing it, without even knowing it, what do they want to control? Each other. That's where the conflict comes in. The conflict is now coming in without even realizing it. Now they're starting to want to control each other and the kiddos more and more and more and more and more. So one of the things I share with folks is to be able to identify what can you control? What can you take? What can you oversee? Maybe you've been wanting to clean that garage out for the last 6 months. You can control that. Go out and clean your garage. Have a plan. Put a plan together. You want to do the closet. Maybe you've been wanting to write something. Maybe you've been wanting to read through the Old Testament. You can control that. You have that ability now. So when you wake up in the morning and you put your feet on the floor, first of all, identify your attitude for the day, but then identify what you can control that day and start to put that together. And then at the end of the day, celebrate it. I don't know. Get a Snickers bar. Whatever you want to do. Have an extra time to do something else. But make sure that you have a plan for that day, something that you, as a type A personality, and know who you are, that you can come away and say, yeah, got it, check. Because if not, it'll drive you crazy, or you'll take it someplace else. And most likely, and I've seen it over and over and over, you're going to take it to your spouse. And you're
That's
just
so good.
looking for conflict.
Yeah. I think it's very easy in times that there's a stay-at-home order or whatever. It's very easy to have kind of the mindset of just go with the flow. And I think you're saying while that might be good in the short term, we're in this for the long haul. And so we've got to think differently than just full on go with the flow.
Yeah, your emotions and your feelings are going to drive your behavior. So you just can't let your behavior float. You've got to take control of your feelings and your emotions to say,
that's good.
This is who I am. And I know I'm wired this way. I've got to put a plan together so that my behavior and that my emotions are now planned out. So my behavior, I should say, follows.
Good stuff. Good stuff. You know, I think sometimes I think one of the things that might be a fallacy that we're working through right now is that in some ways we're seeing this as a simple season, and there are a lot of seasons of our lives. You know, we're seeing this as, okay, this happened for this period of time, and then it's going to pass, and then we'll get back to normal.
Yes.
I think this particular situation, this particular crisis, this particular experience, to me, I think it's different than anything we've ever dealt with before, because I don't think that we're going to come to a point. I don't know that we're ever going to come to a point where this is far enough in our rear view that we have gotten back to an absolute, I think we're going to discover a new normal rather than going back to normal.
Oh, absolutely.
And so one of the things that I wanted to ask you was, what do you see as some of the long-term, lifestyle? We said that this is changing our lives. It is changing our lives. And so it may or may not be that we ever get back to what we know as our lives. What can you speak to that? What are some long-term effects that you see potential in some of this? I mean, you've already spoken to some of it.
I think just on some practical levels, I mean, one example that comes to mind is, I'm sure from now on, teachers will be trained in technology. A lot of them, the stress was they were having to learn a whole new system, and they did wonderfully. Every teacher I know, they just, in record time, were able to completely learn some new systems, new computer systems. That's at a practical level. I think on a spiritual level and an emotional level, it's priorities. For me, and I think I represent a lot of people, is you realize your significance and worth is only in the Lord. Anything you thought that you, whatever that was, finances, whether that was community, whether that was profession, that has all been shown around the world that is not the solid ground. And so in many ways, our faith now takes on completely new meaning. Once we get the ground under our feet and get through crisis crazy, we can really start hearing from the Lord what he's saying to us individually, what he's saying to us corporately. And I think that's going to be a big change for people. Sorry about that.
That's good.
I think that's a great question, Pastor. I think when I meet with a couple for the very first time, I always ask them the question, so why are you here? 99.9% of the couples answer communication. We just don't communicate. We can't communicate. But poor communication is only a byproduct. The real issue is they never have time. They never talk. They never sit down to talk about how can they love and serve each other. What's each other's heart? What's their dreams? What's their passions? What is that? This pandemic has absolutely turned that upside down. I'm finding more and more couples enjoying the time together. Why? Because they don't have the pressure of work, and they don't have the pressure of running the kids to baseball, to soccer practice, to go into all the sporting events, all of those things. They're home. They're sitting on the back porch. They're playing Monopoly, which they didn't realize the game was under the bed for the last 7 years. Right. And now they've taken the game out. And they're sitting there saying, we had such a great time. They're spending the time to get to know each other because they've gotten off of the treadmill. They're standing on solid ground, and they're saying, hey, I remember you. Yeah, I used to like to spend time with you. I used to like being with you.
You're kind of a good person.
Yeah, and there's nobody calling us to come out.
True.
There's nobody telling us to come to this event, to go to this event, to go to this event.
Yeah.
That has been the greatest impact. I really believe that if we were to go forward, and we can't, in this type of mode that we're in now, it would eliminate about 75% of my clients. Really?
Which you would be pleased about.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because they love each other. It's there.
Yeah.
But our culture has ripped them apart. Time-wise has ripped it apart.
Wow. That's so good. So good. Okay. I've got two more quick questions. I say they're quick, but tell us some good stories. What are some things that you've experienced personally? I mean, you've kind of shared some of those with us, you know, the realigning of your time and reprioritizing. And I think those are all some good things. Do you have maybe a story or two, maybe of an individual? I don't want you to break any confidence, but anything that maybe you could share, just something good. Let's give some hope.
John will probably have more specifics, but I can tell you each person that I've talked to or seen in session, there is always a silver lining to it. Each one, and it even shocks me a lot of the time. One example would be someone that lost a job. You think that would be the worst besides losing your life. But it turns out there's been a secret dream of his heart to sell everything, get an RV, and travel the country. I don't know if that'll end up happening, but there was never before that opportunity. There's responsibility. There's other things that you might have. God could be leading people to do something that they just feel like, well, that's not responsible. And I'm not saying to be irresponsible, but that now it's pushed people to do things and have that fearlessness that maybe they wouldn't have had before, to really, hey, now might be the time to do something like this, to follow my heart in this way. And I think and another thing is the workaholism is kind of what we were talking about before. I think that there's just been a collective workaholism and this kind of stress that this is an opportunity to realign that, to rest, to enjoy, to find purpose.
Yeah. A lot of great stories, but I think of one, a couple, Joe and Mary. Joe and Mary had been married, or are married, for about 20 some years. And they just, because of busyness, she's an executive in a company and he's over here, and her life just got busy, like I was sharing before. And so they were on the road of divorce, all the way up to the point of the lawyers dividing up the properties, all of that. The pandemic came in. They said, let's set this aside for a little bit. Then all of a sudden he started saying, do you want to come on over and maybe barbecue? Long story short, they started sitting by the pool together. Makes me gonna cry. They started sitting by the pool together and talking. They started going for walks together. They took the divorce papers and put them in the drawer and said, let's not look at those for a while. Let's continue on. Why? Because they were on a path, again, I'm just repeating myself, they're on a path before that was so fast. They didn't even have time to sit down and talk about how can they reconcile their marriage.
Yeah.
That's how busy they were. The corporate world was calling, everything else was calling, but now he's furloughed. Her workload has been absolutely cut down. And what do they have? Each other.
That's so good.
Now they're starting to find out who that is. They're on a great path now, better than I could have ever helped them.
Yeah.
They're on a great path.
That's so good. You know, in the midst of something that seems so hopeless, isn't it great to know that God still offers hope?
Oh,
and even in tragedy, God can redeem this time, and He can work in lives. Well, listen, I love you guys. I really do. I'm just so thankful for your partnership in ministry. I'm thankful for what you offer to our community. I'm thankful for what you have both meant to me personally in my life and in my family. And I know that for so many in our church and our community, you have spoken life into them in so many ways. I want to ask one final question, then we want to have a word of prayer, and then we're going to let you guys go. We have a few things to update our church on. You know, we've talked a lot about kind of your professional side. I want to talk a little bit about your personal side. How are you personally doing right now in the midst of this?
Well, I almost hate to say this, but I'm at the point where I might have to grieve when it goes back to normal, because now I'm to a point where I'm really enjoying getting organized. All the things I said I didn't have time for, and then I had time and I wasn't doing them, and now I'm doing them. And to me, I just really cherish all the moments, all the lessons, and I think, and the lessons to come. And I think going back to purpose, some inspiring things have been seeing people that now they've rested, they've listened to God, they're with their families, and they're doing things like making masks, or they're making ventilators out of hubcaps, or whatever they're doing. And so I've been really trying to look at, now that I've rested, what are some creative things that God wants to do or say, and just to sit in that and to wait for that to be revealed, and to have that intimacy with the Lord, because it's so easy for other things to come in, crowd that out. And so I'm at this point now, I've gotten through Crisis Crazy, not saying it won't come back, and now I'm really just settling in and resting. And one more thing I wanted to say is, God knew this was coming and he prepared ahead of time. And I think with Stetson Baptist, you are one of the most healthiest churches. And I think you have been preparing for years for this without even knowing it. Being financially integrity, personal integrity, and everything you're doing as a church. So I always have to come back and just praise God for you and what you're doing. Your church people are benefited, in your staff, from the way that God prepared, just like Joseph prepared you all to be in the right place, the right time, for such a time as this. So, sorry,
that's so sweet.
That's great. That's great.
Thank you, Michelle.
Personally, maybe two sides. One is that as a family, we have never walked so much. We have never found out all of the nice parks that are in the land, Woodruff Park and all others, and seeing alligators. I actually went fishing 3 times last week. Could you believe that? As a family, we actually planted a garden out in the back, and we got tomato plants and all of those things. And we're working on our yard and all those things we've been wanting to do, and enjoying it and laughing and being together. I love it. It's absolutely fantastic. The other thing is I've been wanting, and we talk about this all the time, wanting to try to bring my schedule down to something that is orderly. Well, God has brought it down to something that is orderly. And the fact is I like it, and just want to be able to keep it there if I can, to keep it to the place of where now there is time to work in the garden. Now there is time to go for walks. Now there is time to go fishing. Now there is time to do those things. I forgot about those.
That's good. That's good. I want to offer one more thing, and then we'll have a word of prayer, and then we'll let you guys go. Because of the time that we've been given, we've got time to read. I just want to say, boundaries. It is without question. It can be a life-changing book, a life-changing concept. I'm not telling you to that, because I know that you recommend that to a lot of people, but I just want to say to anybody that might be watching, even during this season, boundaries are so vitally important. And it is boundaries are a very loving concept. It's a very powerful thing. I was actually having a conversation with another pastor who was just saying, all the things and the stuff and the this and the that, and I'm here and I'm there, and and he was just like, I'm killing myself. And I said, dude, you've got to create some boundaries in your life. You've got to recognize that you've got to have some time for you as well, some time for your family, some time for your kids. And so it's an opportunity for more and more people to recognize that concept and to apply it in their lives during this time. I keep saying we're in a lab. I mean, our homes really are a lab right now, and you can have a very close observance as to some of the behaviors, and maybe even some of the more unhealthy behaviors that you've developed over time. So,
that's true.
Yeah, good stuff. Guys, once again, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving us the opportunity just to hear from you. This is going to be so life-giving to the people in our church and the people in our community. We're going to put this out on Facebook later on this afternoon, and I know that people will so appreciate it, and other places. We have a website called fordeland.org, and so this will also show up there. You have been such a help to all of our staff, and I'm just so grateful for that. And so I'm going to ask one of the members of our staff to close us in prayer. Justin, would you offer that prayer today?
Well, if you would pray with me. Dear God, I want to thank you for John and Michelle and for the ministry of Heart Peace Counseling. God, I just thank you that they are on the front lines of helping families and individuals to cope with the massive amount of stress and change that comes. And God, I thank you that as we do all of this, that we can do it from the perspective of having hope in you and knowing that, God, you are with us in all of this, and you are here beside us, God, that we are never truly alone. God, that we hear stories of hope, of redemption out of this, that we see families who are pulling their lives back together by spending time together and seeing that you've taken something that is truly a tragedy and used it to rebuild so many families and to create hope and opportunity for reconnection. God, I thank you that in my ministry, I see parents leading their children to Christ, that we see families doing what you called them to do and not being stuck in the rat race of life. God, I pray that each of us watching this and in this meeting, God, that we can see the silver lining, the good news, the positive side of this, to not get stuck in the stress of the change and of the different. But God, but to look at the blessing of the change and the different. And maybe what we had wasn't so great to begin with. God, I pray for Michelle. God, I pray that she is able to make the most of this time, to learn from it, and to take the things out of it and apply them to her life on the backside of this pandemic and quarantine. God, that she is able to take the things that she loves, the things that she's made time for and had time for, and to apply those into the future. God, I pray for John. I pray that he has even more family time, that his schedule gets truly organized and he's able to wrap his mind around what he is doing and why he's doing it. And God, I pray that that isn't a temporary thing for him. I pray that he and his family are able to walk that into the future. God, I thank you for the Christian worldview that these two people come from, and that they're able to share the good news of the only true hope we have in the world is Jesus Christ. And they share that through counseling and through any issue that people are going through. And I pray for peace, and I pray for boldness. If there is anyone who watches this who needs help, who has an inkling of trouble, that wants someone to talk to, God, that they know that John and Michelle are here for them and that they can reach out to them. I pray for wisdom and guidance for all of us as we move through these kind of uncharted times. I pray that we can stop and enjoy the now. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, John.
Thank you guys so very much. Thank you for being a part of this day.
We love
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We appreciate it. All right. Y'all have a great day.
You too.
Wow. What a great conversation. Brad, this may not be great recording, but I'm just going to say, because of the length of our time of talking with them, we may want to take this section where we're talking and separate it out into a different showing so that people can kind of see that and see this. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
We'll make that happen.